I'm a ceramicist from London, and my stand is that one, the Leech tent. And I'm with my father, Chris Bramble, if anyone knows him. He's funny dad. And I've been with him for many years now. He taught me this craft, art form, should I say. And I've really enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed working, one, with my family. I think they're really precious to me. Very important to have a good relationship with your family. And when I started, my intention was to help and to learn and actually to help expand the ceramics field, because I saw how important it was, and I saw what it did to me growing up as a teenager. It really helped me in a sort of therapy way. And I fell in love with it at an early age, and I always wanted to help spread the blessings it gave me. Thank you. Today I'm going to do some throwing. I'm just going to demonstrate how I do these vases. At the moment, maybe for the past year or so, I've been mad on vases. I get a bit obsessed. I just sort of go into one form and just do it 100 times, then move on to the next. So I've been doing these vases, and a lot of them, so I've been doing fairly large scale. I've been doing them in sections just to save my wrist and to save stress, because I cracked my wrist about a year ago when I was boxing. It's a really bad hobby to take up. I started and stopped really quickly. So ever since then, I've had to sort of be quite disciplined with my throwing, and not, I've got to take it easy with doing too much big stuff. So it's really, breaking it down into sections really helps. And when I'm teaching beginners and stuff, they're thrilled when they can discover the technique of altering and joining pots together to make a larger piece. So it's good all round, good thing to learn. Right, I'm just going to need a bit of clay. I'll throw two bits, maybe the body and the top, and just alter it a bit, and then I'm going to join together some leather hard pieces that I made a while ago. I had to transport them in the car, and they've been bashed around a little bit, but let's see what we can do. So that can be for the top. Be for the, maybe I'll do that for should I do it a bit smaller? What's that beeping? Is it this? Sorry, that. Right. Got all the dangly things out the way. God, I keep my rings on though. Okay, kneading. I use a spiral kneading technique. I think beginners usually start off with the ram's head or the ox head. You heard of that one with the horns? I actually find that one more difficult. I don't know why. I think it's because I just used to watch my dad do this and I just copied. And I mean, there's not really any difference. It's just with this spiral or shell kneading style, you rotate it ever so slightly on each one, on each compression. And I like this technique because you can go, as you go round, you can put it straight into a cone shape, and it's ready for the wheel. I like to go through it at least twice or 3 times, and you can feel as you're going through it, because the texture of the clay changes. You can feel when you've gone through it once. You're like, right, I've gone through it once. Then you go again, And you can feel the clay just gets more compact because you're drawing the moisture out of the clay onto the surface, onto your hands. So the clay's getting a bit more compact. And I find it's so important, you know, even when you get clay straight out of a new bag like this, even though that's completely airtight, I would still break into it and knead it. Because also you want to be familiar, you sort of like want to greet yourself with the material that you're using, as well as I sort of see it like in the same way as you comb the knots out of your hair and get all the hair running in the same direction. Same as what this is doing. And the coning technique on the wheel. I think of coning as kneading, but on the wheel as well. So click like that. So kneading that straight into a cone shape and blending all those layers at the bottom. You want a solid lump of clay. You don't want to keep that open, otherwise water opens up. Sometimes it will just open up through the firing. I've had spiral cracks running all the way through my pots before I had properly learnt what kneading does for you. And blending those layers in, more importantly. Right, go through this one. Any questions? Shout at me, it's fine. If you have any questions. This is B17C from Valentine's Clay. So it's a stoneware, and it's like slightly off-white. When it's fired without any glaze on, it looks a bit like cement colour. It's quite raw, it's quite jaundicey actually. I don't really like it without anything on it. I definitely don't show it off without anything on it. If you're going to use a clay without glaze, usually the really toasty clay looks best, or white. I don't know, I find this one's a bit plain. But it's very reliable. I mean, I've always used this clay. So, to be honest, the clay that I use in my studio is usually a mix of like all the students' clay, all the clay that I had last year, and I just bang it all in. Lots of different types of stoneware. And it gives me some really interesting results. It's really nice sitting on a new wheel. They all do the same thing, as long as it goes round and the motor is strong. I'm not really fussy. I've got my water, I've got a selection of tools here. So this doesn't have any, I can see the potter before, looks like he slid it off with his hand or something. I'm not doing that. I think what I'll do is wire, cheese wire there. What I'll do is throw just because I might as well take these back home if I can, so I want to keep them. Unless anyone else wants to keep them, you can. But I did some throwing in my tent yesterday, and because the moisture stays in these tents, it's like a drying cupboard. The pots don't actually dry out at all. Right, I'm just going to throw a plate of clay and stick a bat on here. I mean, this is when you buy the wheels, this is how they come. They don't have, well, most of them don't have pins, but I think there's some new ones on the market that have pins and have a whole bat system. But the ones that I've got at my studio, me and my dad have just drilled holes like through the metal, and then we got these wooden bats made. Makes it so much easier. Oh, you can see me close up. Great. Just flattening out like a pancake of clay there. I'm going to put some rings. Oh, I can look there and not here. Really cool. I'm going to put some rings on the plate of clay just for the suction. one to start with. Whilst I've got the energy, do the big one first. Okay, let's remove some of this old clay. Try and get it in the middle, really helps when you chuck it down. First thing, just get it in the middle. Otherwise, take it off and put it back on again. So otherwise, you're literally fighting it for the next 10 minutes trying to centre it, and it's just not worth it. Just pat it round. Yeah, this can do 60% of the centering. So just that's what I like to tell my students. Just really pat it down before you get going. Seal it. Sealing it on this right hand at the bottom there really helps. You want to get it firmly stuck on before you add water. So if it's a really big piece, I'll try and knead it properly, and that will save me having to cone it up and down. I can just go straight into a centered position. With something like this, I might cone up, half cone. You know, you don't have to go all the way up. No point. I might just do a little half cone, push back down. Just cone as much until it's centered, until it feels good. It's like when you're centering, you're squeezing the clay so much that it's got nowhere else to go but where you put it. It's almost like you're suffocating it in the middle, and then it runs silent like that, and it doesn't move. So I'd say that's enough for me. So this size, normally this is the size of your base that you'd work with. The size of this bun. You always think, am I doing tall and narrow? If you're doing a tall and narrow bottle, you'll make this a little bit more narrow and taller, and vice versa for plates and bowls. I'm going to dive in with my thumbs. So I've got 2 thumbs in the middle. So many different ways of doing this. You can, some people use their finger like that. Some people use their whole hand like that. I just stick my thumbs in and go in, because your thumbs are quite strong. Stretch it open. Now when I stretch it open, I'm thinking about how narrow I'm going to turn it on the end result, and in relation to the amount of clay that I've got. So I'm going to estimate that's enough for now. Flatten the base. Always sort the base out before you make the walls taller. You don't want to be going backwards on yourself. Just makes life a bit harder for yourself. Squeeze water on your hand. You've got to get used to letting go and putting water on. I always just get into the habit of doing it. When you let go, just come back with your sponge. And I squeeze water on my hand so it lubricates the wall inside and outside quickly. Now I'm going to do a first lift. Squeezing the wall, just holding and squeezing and letting it move. Almost it moves me, and I just allow it to move my hands up. And as I'm moving upwards, I lean the walls up and in. When you're getting height, you really want the walls to be tapered in. Otherwise, the moment it flares out, you lose control. It's a lot harder to collar in. I think of clay as almost like skin, like you work from an outward stretch. You want to avoid having to push it in. Doing some lifts now from the bottom. Water on the pot. Collaring in after every lift, and just really telling it where to go. You really learn to be quite. In fact, it was when I was on the throwdown, this is like 5-6 years ago now, when I really learnt, because I was under so much stress. Like, it's really stressful, guys. If you're thinking of applying, really think about how you cope under stress. It's not funny. People break down and like, cry and everything. But I really learned how to bully the clay. Like, I understood what assertiveness, like I'm the boss, my hands are telling the clay where to go, and that it kind of really clicked in for me there because I was so under stress. I was like, come on, come on. And I learned how to kind of just tell it where to go, and it was quick and it was easy. I was like, yes, do it. Right. I've got a lot of clay at the bottom, so I'm going to lift it up slowly. I'm just wrapping a sponge around my knuckle like that. Sometimes it just helps to spread out the pressure that I'm asserting. So I'm going to hold and squeeze at the base. Hold and squeeze until I've got that little ring. I can see that's the amount that I'm lifting. Slowly, sometimes I have to let go gently, readjust, or get some water and come back to that position. You get to the top, you tee off the top, keep that strong and solid, and then collar it in. Lots of ways to collar in, but most of the time you just need to support the walls. I'm just stretching my fingertips out and slowly squeezing it in and upwards like that. Notice how you hook the finger on the lip quite quickly, just to make sure that it doesn't flare out with the speed. You start slowly, but when you're in control, speed really helps you to collar in, because you're asking the clay to go back into itself, to compress itself. So sometimes it will really help you, but you have to be on top of it. Your force has to be on top of the force of the wheel and the clay. I'll do one more pull. I don't want to take too long over this because there's a lot to do. Squeeze and hold. When I have to be patient, as I realise sometimes you have to move really slowly, I try and listen to my breathing. Right, I'm going to go in to shape this now, I think. Just straighten up a tiny bit. Maybe use a kidney on there. Kidney on there. Has anyone not done pottery before here? Put your hand up. Oh, yeah, you. Oh, okay. So here we go. I'm stretching out, up and out, up and out. And doing it against a kidney just saves me having to go back on myself a few times, just sorts the surface out as I go. Compresses it, makes it a bit firmer, solid, smooth, stronger. It actually strengthens up the wool quite a lot with the use of a kidney, because it's removing that top layer of slip or water, and then it makes the clay stand to attention. I'm going to collar the top bit in a little bit. Take some of that water out of the inside before I close it anymore. Just refine this shape a little bit more, always looking at the profile. think Keith is on after me, Keith Brymer Jones. He's an amazing thrower. Now, just coaxing the neck in. Moving slow. You've got to move your hands really slowly, like snail slow. Like sometimes just not moving, but just staying put. And just waiting for it to follow your touch. Sometimes give it a chance. Just going to fold the top in a little bit more. And because I'm putting another piece on top, I want to make sure that this is level 1. I want this to be level. I'm going to turn the pot on its neck. So sometimes I'll just pull up a collar like this, a little collar, and blunt it off so that I can turn it nicely and all of that. So it's got something level to sit on. And leave it thick. Okay, it's really not worth having an anorexic pot for the sake of vanity. Just leave the pot thick, throw it thick. You can turn it down. That's what turning's for. At leather hard stage, you can really refine it and do a lot there. But it needs the strength for the sake of the other process. Any questions? I think I'll move on to the next bit. Do I throw everything on bats? Yes. Yes. Perhaps if I'm throwing like really diddy things off the hump or something, I'll use the hump technique. But otherwise, it's more that I don't want to waste my time faffing around with sliding it off and stuff like that. And because most of my stuff is quite big, because I just find I enjoy the process of big things more. Because I do big things, I can't really get away with sliding big things off unless you want it to be really wobbly. Which is fine as well. If you want, wobbly pots are great. If that's what you're going for. Your pot, your rules. That's what I say. It's quite interesting because I've spent years learning under somebody who's actually quite traditional. My father actually, his skills are quite fine. He's spent years perfecting how to sculpt, and his techniques are really straight and down the line. He knows everything. So I think when I came along and I was just like, all right, yeah, I can do that, that's enough. Right, I'm just going to make up my own stuff now. And I think he was like quite shocked at how I've got away with it. I think when you start, it's important to learn the basics, have a solid grounding, and get confident with an understanding of what you're doing and how to actually make it work, what your hands are doing. How do your hands actually stretch and move on the clay? Once you've understood that, you can do what you want. Hello, come on in. Right, so that's that. Just removing some of the excess. Knowing that usually the top bit will dry, depending on how hot it is in the air, the top bit usually dries out before the base. You have to flip it upside down, let it dry evenly, and all of that. Now let's cut this off. I'll do one top, and I'll just alter it a little bit. It doesn't take me long. I think these shapes are usually take the longest because you're going in and out. cylinder, collar it in. The most important thing is you get it in, and then you notice I stretched this bit out at the end. Everything comes off a cylinder, really. That's the most important shape that you learn. You start off with cylinders. In our studio, we get our students to do cylinders and bowls. First thing you want to get to grips with, really. I mean, a bowl is a flared out cylinder. Everything is a variant of a... She's telling me to hurry up. All right, I'm going. Good question. I think if you're going at it every day for hours at a day, you really do need to be careful. You need to think about what you're doing, how you're doing it. Because I think at that moment in my life, probably about 5 years ago, I really did have a issue actually, and I had to see one of those people that crack your back into place. I had a problem with my shoulder because I'm left-handed, and I just learned right-handed because Dad doesn't really faff around. He's like, left-handed, so you just get on with it. I just got on with it. But I had to. I don't know. I'm still quite dominant with my left hand, but I think it took me a while to just get the balance right in the shoulders, and I suppose learning how to use my right side more, it kind of gave me this funny. I put a lot of stress on my right shoulder, which probably wasn't used to it. So I would say, how do you go about it? First of all, stretch, like really take care of your body. Yeah, because your body is the machine here. You know, you're learning how to use this machine, but your body turns into one. Warm up, stretch your wrists and stuff like that, and warm down as well. That's quite important. But also, I'd say I think a lot of the damage is done if you're simply just overdoing it. You know, you really are. Like if you're in pain, stop. You know, your body's telling you to stop. And also when beginners go, they do like a bag of clay when they're not ready to. And the only reason why you're not ready is just because your body physically, you need to build up the strength and learn how to use the technique without hurting yourself. So, but I would say if you are learning to do big things, just each time you sit down with a ball of clay, get comfortable with one amount, and then keep just adding a little bit more, adding a little bit more, adding a little bit. So gradually your whole system, your muscles, your core strength is learning as well, is moving with you. But yeah, I would say if you're in pain, you need to change your technique, and you need to rest more. Right, so here's a cylinder. I made a hole straight down the bottom because it's the neck. And you can even use a knife before it gets this tall. Use a knife and cut a clean ring around the bottom, less turning. Let's get a bit of height with this one. What else? What other tips? I'm trying to think. I think it's technique. I can't remember how I got it, but I just know that I was doing something badly wrong, and that's how I had a bad shoulder. I think I was just overdoing it, straining myself. Breathe. Breathe a bit more. Let the blood actually go to your muscles. Helps. But also, there's lots of different types of wheels. You've got stand-up ones. They're really good for people that have back issues. I'm using the knuckle pulling technique here, which I find quite good because you can put all your body weight behind that. It's all about your body weight. It really is. Technique. Okay, maybe that helps. Body weight. When you're centering, I missed all of that out, I should have said. But when you're centering, really lean into it. You've got your whole body that, you know, weighs a lot more than the clay usually. And so I would use that to help you with the technique. You should, to be honest, you should feel no strain. There shouldn't be the strain. Because if you're using your body weight in the correct way. There we go, I'm going to knuckle it up one more time. So I've got my height, left it quite thick because I'm going to stretch it out now. So let's do another knuckle pull. Slow down a bit. If you want it to flare out with you, go with the momentum, use speed. Speed, 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 speed. Speed just helps blossom it out. Like when I'm doing bowls, the last stretch, I'll go high speed and I'll just watch it flare out. And then you have to stop really quickly before it collapses. So speed is a really good tool, you know. Sometimes my students, I tell them, right, come on, speed up, come on, use the momentum. Like actually use the machine because it does help. Right, a little bit of kidney action to compress the walls, to iron it out a little bit. But also, as I go up here, I'm going to go up and out, up and out, up and out. And just lean out with it. And just let it come out. Push it in the middle here, where you want it to go in. And with some extra turning, you can really refine these shapes and make it go a little bit in on the waist, a bit more. And because I'm going to alter the shape of this one, so the top is going to be all wiggly and wavy, like these two, for example, I won't be able to turn the top bit very well. Maybe just sculpt it with my hands if you need to remove extra clay. But at this stage, I really make sure that I don't have to do too much turning on this section. If that makes sense. I'll probably stop there. They collapse really easily, these. But to be honest, ones that collapse are usually the best ones, because I just hang them upside down or play with them a little bit more. You can use a bit of leather or plastic for the rim, just to compress the rim. Or you can use the skin, that flap in between your hands. That's quite a cool one. It's a bit weird though. Right, moving on. Take the water out. Always dry them, don't leave a puddle in there, otherwise it will just split as it dries overnight and it shrinks. Clay goes through a lot of movement. It's amazing stuff. It really moves around. It does a whole life of its own. I think the turning point for me was when I understood, when I kind of put my consciousness inside the clay and pretended that like I was the clay, and I was like, okay, so when water comes into me, I go like that, I expand, and when water goes out of me, I go like that. And it really helped, because then I understood how to avoid cracking, how to avoid exploding, how to avoid all those really little things that just got inside the brain of clay. And I know that sounds a bit weird, but it's actually quite normal when you're trying to understand your material. That's what you need. I'm going to wire that off and clean the hands a little bit. I didn't bring a towel. And say, for example, I'll just do a generic alteration here. Sometimes I just go in like that and don't think about it. And sometimes I'll have a particular frilly pattern. Sometimes I start off with the in bit
Like I do an innie there, I do an innie there. An innie there. Sometimes it's really dramatic, and sometimes I just want a subtle little move, a little bit of movement, knowing that when it's in the kiln or when it's got glaze on it, it dampens the shape. The shape is less sharp with heavy glaze on, so a lot of my pieces have got a lot of glaze on. And then if this was dry enough without collapsing, I would stretch out or use a roller, and I could even stretch out almost like jug lips that go down. This isn't, I can see that this isn't going to really handle much more because the clay's a bit wet and it's going to collapse. So I can leave that. Yeah, there we go, I'll leave that one. Yeah, this is like the wildness in me. Sometimes my dad, he looks at the stuff, he goes, you chucking that in the bin? I'm like, no, actually I'm going to sell it for a lot of money, thank you very much. And I do. You can't say anything. I love my work because it's, you know, I put my feelings and thoughts into these, so. As do we all. But for me, it's not just about showing off about how good you are. I mean, I can do it and I have to throw a pot. You know, it's not that. And when you've been doing it for years, it's not that big a deal. But it becomes a different story. It's more like it's now about expression at this time in the game for me. Just dry this off a little bit. Clean down before Kate Malone comes and shouts at me. She's a lovely woman. I actually really admire her. She tells me off for being messy. Right, have you got a towel? Can I use your top? Right. I've got that. Right, let's start with this one. That. So I've got 3 bits here. I've got a base. I've got a top there. And I've got a mangled up bit. Someone kicked it about earlier, but I won't blame anyone. Joking. Let's start with, I've turned this a little bit. I've probably gone halfway on it. It's still fairly moist, so I won't make it any too much thinner now. I just feel the wall, see how much I can take off. I really want to keep it solid on the neck, and you don't want to turn it too much here. I've made a few mistakes in the past where I make it too thin here, and then once it's got the weight of this and the glaze, it will sag and the whole pot goes sideways in the kiln. So I don't want to do that. I'm going to turn this one first. So that's a little wide cylinder squeezed in. And I'm just going to trim a little bit of the bottom. Just get that a little bit. And when you're joining things together like this, you want to make sure you don't have bone dry bits among your collection, because they're really easy to break, number one. But when you turn a bone dry rim upside down, quite often you don't notice, but that's how you get your hairline cracks. So you've got to be careful. I think I've got to hurry up. neaten that up later. Right, if I centre it on this way, I can cross hatch it, join it, cross hatch it and join it. Where's my toothbrush gone? I usually have a toothbrush to... Sorry, I've got a brush here. So let's do a little bit of cross-hatching. Figure out where it's going to sit on there, on my base, onto the top there. Sometimes I just roughly get it in the middle like that. And then I'll outline it where I need to cross-hatch. There. I'll cross-hatch all the way around there. Cross-hatching, I do it deep. You've got to really do it deep properly. The whole point in cross-hatching is to get those two sides locked together, and they need to be the same water consistency, so when they dry they shrink and move together, and then you don't get things popping off and splitting, falling apart and stuff like that. So cross-hatching, obviously, most people know by now, it's really important. Just going to wet it a little bit. I just want the water to go into the grooves, and then I'll do it again. Yeah. Do I use ready-made slip? What for? I just use water and cross-hatching, because when you add the water, you've got the slip. But I mean, right here I've got lots of slip. If you want to. No, I don't make little pots of slip. Me personally, I think probably those potters that use porcelain clays or maybe finer white clay, maybe better. But I do need a lot of water. Right, there we go. A little bit rushed, but we don't have a huge amount of time. You could use a spirit level to get this straight, but I never do. I just use my eye. I'm just going to blend it like that. I would also turn this upside down and have a look at the inside of here and blend the inside and just make sure everything's coherent. And ooh. And that's going to go on there. Now, this bit I haven't even turned. I think I've got another one that is turned. I'll just remove some of this extra. Get this one. Just turned that one, so that's going to work a little bit better. And just mark where it's going to go. I'm just going to remove this neck of clay here. I can do that with... do it with a knife. You want to use, when you're cutting through leather hard clay, you really want sharp knives to make all the difference. I can just fold that off, remove that. How much time have I got? Have I got to go now, Hannah? We finished? Oh, we are. They're all outside. Okay, let's wrap it up. No, no, it's fine. I think I'm literally almost done. I think yeah, because I've shown that. I'm just gonna cross hatch and join that on, and you cut this at a 45-degree angle so it follows the shape of the shoulder of this pot, and you blend it all in with a kidney. And I think that's enough for me to show you, because there's a whole gang outside waiting to come in. Thank you so much, guys.